All right. I think we are now recording. Everyone, I am joined today by Angelina Blessed. I'm super excited to have her on the show. You have been sort of in my radar for quite a while now. I know I've been in the same room as you before, but we've never actually met until today. So I'm very excited about this conversation. And Angelina, would you like to say hello to the listeners of Bite Me and tell them, the elevator pitch about who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Margaret. I really appreciate being here. I appreciate having a platform that is dedicated to edibles and all things that's kind of in my heart. I am a retired professional Muay Thai fighter. I fought professionally mostly in Thailand, China, and Mexico from the years of 2006 to about 2019 was my last fight. And I just started medicating because I was trying not to take painkillers. And so I started making cookies and butters and oils for all the guys at CM Number One, which is a Muay Thai gym in Toronto, Ontario. And I just kind of noticed what they were doing, and they would all go outside before training and smoke a little something. And then like I would just watch them kind of move into a flow of training. And it was never stigmatized to them, and that was really cool. Now, I don't think at the time that they understood that they were kind of medicating themselves and using it as a medication, but I really saw the benefits of all of that. So starting to feed them cookies was a really cool thing. And then they were noticed in the legacy market. People like Amy Weinstein, who ran Other People's Pot, and she ran a bunch of really great legacy dispensaries. 416 Medicinal was one of the names. And she got me onto a Vice documentary called Cannabis Candyland. And that got millions of views. And it was me and all the edibles and concentrate makers of Toronto back, I believe it was 2016. And it was really funny because all the shatter makers and whatever were all wearing balaclavas and had voiceovers. And I was just me in my Muay Thai shorts going like, hey, everybody, I'm Angelina. And then I took Damien from Vice into the ring and I beat him up and then took him into the kitchen and made cookies for him. So it kind of started there. And then I was part of the green market through Lisa Campbell and Sarah, and really honored to have a table there and be one of the first edible makers in Toronto to have a table there, and got to stand with people like Rena from High Society Supper Club and Fritz, who made the first hash rosin gummy. And, those became the best of people. From there, legalization happened, and I got which was once a 100 milligram vegan chocolate bar, into a 10 milligram vegan chocolate bar in the legal market in Ontario. And I'm really proud of that. It was 100 milligrams of CBD and 10 milligrams of THC, and only 1 milligram per THC per square. So it was a really great, what I thought, starter chocolate bar. And, the Ontario market being what it is, and all of the greedy people that have their hands in all of the products, it became very different than me making chocolate bars and selling it to people and getting the money for myself. It became all these licensed producers and salespeople that had their hands in it, taking percentages and whatnot, and were owed a lot of money. And then they just bankrupt companies. So it's tough and heartbreaking. And then I really, hit a probably 2-year depression of, my dream might be gone and whatnot, and not trusting any legal licensed producers in Ontario any longer. And, my dream, like I've been spending every winter in Thailand for the last, I believe 21 years now. So I would go when I would train and fight, and, I wasn't medicating obviously in Thailand because of the rules, but they legalized a few years ago. And then my dream kind of changed, where I got an opportunity through a producer, or through a sales company in Thailand, where I was able to bring my chocolate bar to the legal market in Thailand. And that was kind of a mind-blowing dream of all of my worlds coming together, because the stigma is even worse in Thailand with how people and Thai people thought about cannabis. So it was a dream come true. And so I've now had 2 trips over there where I've been able to go to the gyms, talk to athletes, and I got to design a chocolate bar that was above and beyond anything that Ontario could have ever produced. So my Ontario bar, legal bar, was produced in Kelowna through Valens, and then shipped here and gone through a sales license company, and then had to ship to the OCS and blah, blah, blah. And it was, like I said, 100 milligrams of CBD to 10 milligrams of THC. And but the bar that we got to make in it comes out of Chiang Mai, which is in the north of Thailand, and I got to design it through this company that was already making chocolate bars, and I got to teach them how to infuse it with the full spectrum that I wanted to, which wasn't really my choice with Ontario. It had to be distillate or nothing, and they didn't really tell me anything about what was going on. But my chocolate bar in Thailand is made on an organic cacao farm, made with super love, and the quality of the chocolate is just like nothing I ever experienced in Ontario, except for the legacy one, and it's been really cool that I've been able to just do sales tours, talk to the stores, see the insanity going on within the Thai legal market right now and the ups and downs of it. And, it's a bit of a wild west out there right now, but it's super exciting. So
That's amazing. You just said so many things that I want to touch on.
it's a bit of a blurb. So yeah.
Started out with like a pretty long career in fighting. And so I can imagine that it's only natural that you gravitate towards edibles to help you with performance and recovery. One of the things I just wanted to touch on was in Thailand, you mentioned that there's even more stigma around cannabis use there than there is here. And that surprised me in a way, because it just feels like even though it was illegal for so long, that it was sort of part of the life there in a lot of ways. Like I've heard some people describe cannabis use in cooking as like sometimes using another herb like basil or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think it's really I think it was really stigmatized with the Thais because of how illegal it was for them, right? So
Right.
now, but what we're seeing in Thailand is the Thais aren't buying the weed. It's a very, very low percentage of Thai people that are buying cannabis because the prices are actually more expensive in Thailand than it is in Canada. So
Mhm.
like if you're walking around, say, Koh San Road or any of the kind of more popular touristy areas, you're looking at like $10 to $15 per gram of kind of maybe sometimes questionable cannabis. But who are buying it are any of the foreigners, a lot of the Muay Thai fighters, a lot of people that are there for a long time, and especially popular in like the wellness communities. So that stigma is breaking, but I still feel that like I still can't walk into like an all Thai gym and really talk about cannabis because people will still kind of look at me a little bit sideways, especially when it comes to like Muay Thai and cannabis, right? So
Right.
but there are some super weed friendly gyms, especially Bangkok and Phuket, and that's really cool. But it is mostly foreigners for sure. And
Interesting.
people are figuring out the wellness benefits to it. So that's a big, big plus. And I think that's really where the conversation needs to kind of be pushed
Right.
as well, as opposed to just being, say, intoxicated by weed, right?
Right. Yeah. A
Yeah,
little more mindfulness around it would probably bring
right.
more people to it, because it makes sense that if it's been so illegal for so long that people would be not necessarily just suddenly like, oh, okay, it's fine now. Like
Right.
that's not often how people's minds work. So
And even in Ontario, people
yeah,
there's still a heavy, super heavy stigma to it, like
yeah, there is. I just forget about it because I work in this space.
no, we absolutely do. But my
It's
my
good to know.
partner was teaching the Cannabis and Society course at Centennial College, which he wrote. But it was really interesting because most of his students are international students. So a lot of kids from India and a lot of kids from China. So a lot of their papers that they're writing are being like, yo, I just came to this country and there's weed shops everywhere and I've never even smelled it and everyone's on the street smoking it. And they're frightened by it. So even though they're taking the course and wanting to learn about it and like probably doing it to like upset their parents and whatnot, but it's a course that they would never have been able to take in their homes. So exciting for them because some of them come around and be like, yo, I went in and I bought a little something and that was really crazy, or but sometimes they really like it and sometimes they really don't. But
Right.
if you've never smoked a joint and you walk into a shop and you get a pre-roll that has distillate and diamonds and wrapped in keef and whatever, you're probably not going to have a great experience, right? But
And that's where the bud tenders are so important. And I used to work in a dispensary, like back in when we had the first legal store in the town that I live in.
okay.
And people were coming in to explore. My favorite customers were like a few little old ladies that came in that wanted to buy weed in a pipe. And they're like, I haven't smoked it in like 60 or 70 years. That was the best. But honestly, like, are you directing her to the, infused pre-rolls like you just mentioned? No,
Yeah.
that would be definitely not a good
And
idea.
like doses are really low. Like my dad walked into a store and somebody gave him a 10 milligram edible, and that should be doable, but he had a really kind of scary experience about it. And that's
Right.
terrible because unfortunately, I would say a majority of people probably have a bad edibles experience when it shouldn't be like that, right? But
Yeah.
like,
And you've been involved in the edibles space for a long time. So you know, I'm sure all too well that 10 milligrams for one person is nothing, and 10 milligrams for the next person is, like you said with your dad, a horrible time.
yeah.
And so the start low, go slow thing that people always repeat is so important because it's true. Like
But
there's no
that's the thing. I think that's why Blessed did well in the legacy market, because a lot of people were just kind of setting up tables, and we were still learning how to measure THC and a lot, and like we were still doing it from flower, so that makes it even more like unspecific as to what the dosage could be. But we were there to answer questions, and that's like we got the old ladies who just were like, I have arthritis pain, I have a daughter that's bothering, like it's just like, there really needs to be someone there to be able to answer the questions. And we a long time ago I did a yoga class for people who had not consumed before, and I fed them like 2.5 to 3 milligrams. And for people that haven't experienced cannabis before, you could see that they were a little bit touched by it, right? And I think that's kind of cool and exciting. So it shouldn't be a scary experience for people. Like if
Yeah,
we're like, yeah.
but it is sometimes, which is why it's important that people like yourself are out there doing the work that you're doing, because you're just educating people around how to consume edibles safely, which I think is super important because it's more uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Is that people are more intimidated by edibles probably than other forms because that bad time can last for so damn long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it sure can. I
no,
had a lot of experiences when I first started experimenting where, I'd lick the wrong fork or something and
right.
just like,
Well, we've all done that. If you've made any edibles, so we've all probably licked the wrong spoon.
yeah,
You haven't even eaten your baked goods yet, and you're already fried. But
right, exactly.
now, as far as your athletic career goes, was there anything in particular that brought you to cannabis?
Absolutely. Getting punched in the head for a living was definitely,
Right.
and the thing about the kind of time frame of fighters that I came from is that we weren't taught anything about recovery. I basically like didn't have a period for 6 years because of my, the fight weight that I was keeping myself at, the constant head traumas. I went to China and I got knocked out by someone that was way out of my league. As soon as she hit me, I knew I was in big trouble. And, so flying back with that kind of a concussion. Um, and then I started like listening to, Joe Rogan talk about sensory deprivation, talking about the healing benefits of CBD and stuff like that. And I really had to start to consider that because, I would go to the doctor and be like, I don't feel well. I'm super nauseous. Lights bothering me. Screens are bothering me, and I didn't really know what to do. So, kind of seeing what the guys were doing at the gym, I just kind of followed suit. But having kind of bad lungs, I didn't want to be smoking at the same time. So, um, I found, a real benefit from kind of high fat, low sugar edibles. And there was nothing on the market at the time that was kind of covering that. And, as a fighter, keeping myself within a low fight weight category, I couldn't go home at night and, eat a bunch of cookies or whatever. Didn't feel right about that, especially knowing like the anti-recovery benefits of sugar, like it just
Mhm.
wasn't making sense to me. Right.
Right. Yeah. So you started to introduce cannabis into your regular training regimen.
Absolutely.
And
And just, and as recovery to start, I started working with strains like, Pink Kush and Blueberry and those like heavy indica strains, and really finding the benefits of what would happen as soon as I started to sleep a little bit better and then eat a little bit better. Because like you come home from sparring and you're kind of like jacked up with pain, and then you kind of like toss and turn all night. And every time you turn over, you're like, oh, this hurts and that hurts. And you're not getting the sleep that you need. So then your body isn't recovering. But as soon as I started adding things like the sensory deprivation tanks with all of the magnesium, and then, a little bit of breath work, and then, some edibles, like I really found that the recovery was better. Now, it was after another severe concussion where I had to take some serious time off and wasn't able to have any kind of impact or have anyone punch at my face, that I just started like using it for shadow boxing and light running at home. And that really made a huge difference in my mental state even. So, learning about my own flow and stuff became a really kind of cool thing. And then I started playing with sativas and, learning about how they energized me and whatnot. So it was kind of a kind of cool, uh, thing that I figured out or felt that I had figured out. So it was really fun for me to just to start my runs and, rip a couple bongs and do that. And then I, had gone to Kelowna and brought my legacy brand out there and partnered with Ross Rebliati. So had all of my edibles. I made kombucha and chocolate and cookies and took it all to Kelowna and sold it out of his store. And so that was uh, a great partnership just because he and I were athletes who got it, and yeah, that was a really cool fun time. Very
Yeah,
illegal, but very cool time.
yeah, it sounds like I mean, infused kombucha, that would be pretty delicious. I think I love
It
kombucha.
just, I call it like the champagne of cannabis, right? So it was
Yeah,
just like something about those bubbles. I felt like it kind of went straight to your head, and the benefits of the SCOBY and ginger and all of that. It was a really cool product.
yeah,
I'm so sad that making edibles in Ontario was such an expensive and overpriced thing. I wanted to put out infused water and stuff, but like they're like it's going to be $8 retail. I'm like, we're still talking about water, right? So
yeah.
it's tough, but
I've heard from a
um,
few people that have been in the edibles making game, like on the legal side, that it's a double regulated industry. You have all your food regulations, then on top of that, you have the cannabis regulations, making it a pile of regulations
yeah,
that are
yeah. Health Canada's got their hand in there. The government's got their hand in there. The OCS has their hand in there. The sales license people have their hand in there. It's an impossible situation. Like
yeah, you got
my my
pockets.
legal, my legacy chocolate bar was $20, but you're getting 120 milligrams of THC from it.
Hmm.
And then the legal bar was $10 and you're getting 10 milligrams of THC in it. So it's hard to get people to do that, especially it was the middle of the pandemic and all of that. So like who really had money for it? And then you see the chocolate bar companies that were doing well and they've got a $5 piece of chocolate on the market that tastes like terrible, but people, unfortunately, that's where the economy's at. They were like, I want to get high. It's $5, whatever. So it's
Yeah,
hard. That's just where
yeah.
we're at in this economy, unfortunately. Yeah.
Now, were you using THC as well, like during your training? It sounds like you were mentioning that you were using
It,
CBD
it
for recovery, but you were introducing THC into your training programs.
Yeah, the last few years of my training, there was always, I would always smoke before I would go to the gym, and not on a sparring day or anything like that, because like your reaction time is different. Like, don't be fooled. Um, but I like for warm-ups, for tech sparring, for, bag work, it's just gets me out of my head a little bit. And I'm always so, ADHD and reeling that it's good just to kind of slow myself down a little bit. And that's kind of, excuse me, what it does for me, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people are trying to get out of their head all the time. So THC would be very good for that. Now, you've also talked publicly about having cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. Can you talk about how you got the diagnosis and how you treated it and the aftermath? Because I think it's something that a lot of people hear about, but they don't necessarily understand.
I had gone through a few years of like a severe depression and heavy anxiety post pandemic. And I really wasn't sure what was kind of setting me off. But for years, I'd been having nausea at different times of the day. And I always thought it was from possibly like overtraining or old concussion stuff, or, I had all sorts of weird things in my head about, what it could be from. And then the symptoms just started getting worse and worse. And so the thing about cannabis hyperemesis syndrome is that I didn't correlate that my nausea was because of the cannabis that I was consuming. Now, I was consuming a lot post pandemic. Yeah, I'd medicated myself into a bit of a corner, but I was like smoking quite a few bongs, quite a few infused joints, and then I was consuming hundreds of milligrams of either RSO or hash-based edibles or rosin-based edibles, and I was starting to get vomiting, severe pain in my upper stomach and right side, pain through my shoulder, and vomiting and trembling episodes that would last for hours in the middle of the night. Now, smoking cannabis during those would make me feel better, but then hours later, I would have another episode. So I took multiple trips to the hospital. I was taken out of my house in an ambulance one day because of my weakness. And basically, what happens is that the sickness will stop you from eating, and then it slowly starts to shut your kidneys down. I had two emergency room doctors try to diagnose me with this, and I was in complete denial about it. I thought that cannabis did not hurt people. I thought that I was, quote, safe with it and educated about it. But, after my second diagnosis and going over the list of symptoms, me and my partner were both like, this is exactly what it is. So I had to do a severe detox, which was very uncomfortable for me. And I was completely sober from any cannabis products for 6 weeks. Now, luckily, through the guidance of amazing cannabis doctor and emergency room doctor, Dr. Ira Price from Hamilton, he told me that I could start to consume CBD again. So that was a bit of a godsend. And I figured that out. Now, it was really heartbreaking for me thinking that, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to consume edibles again, because I was about 6 weeks away from going to Thailand to get to taste my Thailand chocolate bar. So I'm like, if I get all the way to Thailand and get sick from this, I'm just going to be so unhappy. So, I had been sober for 6 weeks and then got to Thailand and got to try a square of my chocolate, and it was awesome. And I didn't have any more symptoms, but I do have to be careful, because if I start to get on a path of overconsumption again, my body tells me almost right away. So I'll start to get nausea. I'll start to get the weird pain in my arm. I'll get weird stomach pains. So I do have to be really careful. So I've almost completely given up smoking flower. My hundreds of milligrams a night is probably maybe once or twice a week at 5 to 8 milligrams of THC, but I'll put back as much CBD as I possibly can. We keep a bit of isolate around the house, CBD isolate, so I literally throw it into smoothies, coffees, anything.
So basically you can still consume copious amounts of CBD, but not THC.
No, I really have to keep it low again, really, really low. So I'll smoke a couple dabs a day of hash that I know where it comes from, we've made it. And, I seem to have a bad reaction to a lot of the legal flower that's out there. I think that things aren't being tested properly. I think that I might be having reactions to anything, any of the nutrients that are being used, any of the preservatives that are being used. And, unfortunately, people aren't being super honest within the Ontario legal market as to what's actually going on in their flower. So I have to be really.
And sometimes the repercussions for some of these big companies are not that don't seem to have a lot of teeth.
Well, that's it. I think if somebody say buys a product and is unhappy with it, they don't take the kind of right steps, So if somebody say gets a bad quality flower or something that's moldy, people don't call Health Canada. They just call the brand, and the brand will be like, oh, let me send you a free bag of something. And that usually will solve the problem or shut the person up. But, it really comes down to, like, if something is wrong with it, if you catch mold on it, then you call Health Canada and there needs to be a recall, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can go on the Health Canada website and see recalls that they have.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, I mean, the company has to be willing to take down that whole crop if it's got,
and imagine the loss, right? Imagine the cost of that loss. So they're going to do everything.
Don't, because if it's profits over people, the odds are they're going to put the profits first, and then here we are. But yeah. So I really appreciate you sharing that story with me, because I think it's something that not a lot of people are willing to talk about, because, like you said, we have this belief that cannabis can solve all our ills. And I think it can solve a ton of ills for sure for a lot of people, but you do have to be maybe mindful of your consumption sometimes, because the products that we're seeing on the market these days are so different than the ones we saw even 20 years ago or 50, let alone 50 years ago or whatever. So, yeah.
And even what you're consuming and where you are makes a difference, So, like, if my stress levels are different, I could smoke something and I could have like a bad anxiety reaction to it. So that's just because of my stress level being different, and everyone is different that way, right? So, like, my newer recommendations for people are definitely, definitely starting with CBD. It's, people are really over consuming high THC cannabis products. And I think that it's not helping people in the way that they think it is,
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also you can consume a lot more CBD than you think you can. Like to get some of those like therapeutic benefits, you often need a
Yeah.
lot more CBD than what you might get in a legal market edible.
No, like consuming 5 milligrams of CBD isn't doing anything for anybody. So even though, like, say the edible is 10 milligrams of THC, having that 5 milligrams just kind of balances the product a little bit more, but it's not really doing anything for you, especially like athletes or women or older people. Like, I would love to see people eating at least 100 milligrams of CBD per day.
Right.
CBD doesn't work because you eat it one time. It's more of an effect of like take it every single day and you're putting like a little bit of a barrier on your brain. It's helping, you know, uh,
It
what do
like
I call it?
accumulates in the body too, right? Like it
Yeah,
needs to accumulate a little bit before you see the maximum benefits versus taking it
absolutely.
one time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you have any advice for people who suspect they may be dealing with like a cannabis hyperemesis? Am I saying that correctly?
Cannabis hyperemesis. Yeah.
Hyperemesis.
Um, Unfortunately, the only thing that you can really do for yourself is take a break from the products, and that is really difficult. And I think we are a little bit more dependent on these products than we kind of want to admit or believe. So, weaning is important. And, cold turkey may not always be the correct answer too, which is what I tried to do. And I had, I did not have a great reaction to it. My endocannabinoid system was just like, this is not okay. But, yeah, you need to talk to a doctor who knows something about it. And unfortunately, not a lot of Canadian doctors are familiar with it, but all they kind of tell you to do is quit. So I did like a bit of a kidney detox and a liver detox and all of those things for myself. And just gave they say green tea really helps and all of those kind of bioaccumulator kind of things. But there just needs to be more research on it, and there just really isn't. So I think kind of spreading the word about it is important.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. No, I agree with you because, like I said, so many people just want to discount that whole idea of cannabis being harmful in any way. But again, with legalization, we're seeing really potent products on the market. And if you're consuming those, extensively, then you might be crashing out your endocannabinoid system because that's all about
100%.
physical balance, right? Like the
Yeah,
purpose is to balance out all the systems in your body. And yeah, if you're leaning too heavy one way, but nobody wants to hear that they have to take a tolerance break. It's always better when you choose to take a tolerance break than when you're forced to. So
yeah.
yeah,
No, it
maybe,
wasn't fun.
yeah.
Wasn't fun. I was really happy when I could go back to it, and but it was also nice to kind of start over because I was really not good about kind of forcing myself to do tolerance breaks over the last 10 or 15 years, right? You just get so comfortable with where you're at and you get so comfortable like sleeping right through the night. And, as a woman my age, I don't always sleep through the night. So, I never wanted to kind of take that away from myself. And I never wanted to have to depend on, say, pills or prescriptions to kind of get through that either. So,
Naturally. And
yeah,
like you, I do use a lot of cannabis in the evenings and it does help. Sleep is one of the benefits of it. And when I
100%.
don't, I definitely notice more vivid dreams that I'm
Definitely.
not always
Definitely.
prepared for. So
Yeah.
get
You're
your
like,
milk.
wow, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
the days that I ate a ton of edibles and I wake up the next day and I realize I haven't rolled over. I'm like, am I getting a good sleep? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Now, changing gears just a little bit, you're a Muay Thai athlete and you embody the image of a powerful woman. So, does this translate into business? And what's been your experience as a woman in a pretty male-dominated industry? And that could probably be towards both the Muay Thai fighting and the cannabis industry.
I think with the kind of generation of fighters that I got to grow up with in Thailand and Toronto, I was usually one of the only females in the room,
Mhm.
which I kind of liked. And I wasn't really, I was treated a bit different in Bangkok and some of the gyms that I trained in because of the, say, superstition that comes with women. The original big Muay Thai stadiums had signs on the side of the ring in Thai that says women are not allowed to touch this. So there were. Women weren't allowed to fight in the big stadiums just until I believe the last 2 years. So it's, there were even rings that I wasn't allowed to step into where I had to train on the floor. Now, I always got treated very well, but I think that, I don't. feel the kind of stereotype towards myself because I think there's a level of toughness to me, and maybe sometimes that might bring a little bit of fear, but I think that's okay. But I really haven't dealt with stereotypes in the market because I feel that I've brought a bit of a specialty to it, and and I think people kind of maybe respect what I've done, and I appreciate that. So, um, I don't feel that I was treated super well within the legal market in Canada, but I feel that the legal market in Canada is run by people, for the most part, that don't actually care about the community that's behind it. It's very rare that those people are still left. A lot of the legacy producers got walked out, got IP stolen from them. So I'm happy that I still have, even though like my bars aren't on the Canadian market anymore. I think we kind of took them off at a good time, but yeah, I think
You haven't had to deal with it too much, which
I
is
haven't had,
it's always nice to hear. It's always nice to hear when, yeah, because I don't like to hear the bad stories, to be
you
honest.
know,
Although it sounds like your experience with the Ontario legal market was in itself not a great story or not a great experience for yourself either.
no, not a great story at all. Like the people that we dealt with uh, took care of themselves and their brands first, but they promised us to do a lot with our brands. And so it wasn't just Blessed that came in, it was Blessed and a few other really cool brands from the legacy market. And they just kind of took our stuff and, put out some products, but didn't push it in the way that they should have, didn't communicate with us in the way they should have, and definitely did not pay us. So,
Right.
so that was a massive heartbreak and something that, if it had happened in the legacy market, people would have literally been slapped for it. But for some reason, the robberies that kind of happened are allowed within the legal market.
Right.
So,
Which doesn't
um,
make a lot of sense. It's like that white collar crime that just gets looked the other way.
yeah,
Whereas if it was any other kind of crime, the book would be
yeah.
thrown at them, maybe hauled off to jail. And
And like, I think people just don't check resumes, which is crazy to me. So these people can be allowed to take companies, bankrupt companies, uh, not support the brands that they promised to, but then can still move on and take over other companies and take on other brands and still keep going. So, like if I bankrupted a company, I hope the next person wouldn't hire me. Hope they look at my
right.
resume and be like, oh, wow, she did a terrible job running that
Yeah.
company. So, like, why are more brands signing with these people? But I think that's the thing is that people don't go, like, I never went online and named names, and I never went online and like said so and so needs a slap, like even though I say it at home a lot, but but I think that's it, like we'll probably have to fight in court for years if we ever get to see anything from it. But
Right.
it's sad that we weren't taken care of in the way that we were promised, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I also wanted to mention you mentioned in Thailand how some women weren't allowed to. Well, women weren't allowed to fight in certain rings until a couple of years ago. And I'm just curious. This is a little off topic, perhaps, but are you seeing more of a resurgence in women's sport? Because I feel like in Canada and maybe in the U.S. there is a lot more interest in women's sport now, and I think that's really exciting, actually.
The level of fighters that I see coming out of Thailand right now, I'm just so excited for because, there were like the original women that I got to kind of grow up around, like the Kaylee Reeses, and, the Julie Kitchens and those women, but they were rare. There was like a handful of them. And now the level of the women that are coming out that are just shredded and super talented and super aggressive and, um, just amazing at what they do. So like I'm really excited for them. I wish I was 10 years younger again that I could still be a part of that, but it's just like they're badass, and it's Thai women, and it's women from all over the world. So the easiness of traveling to Thailand and becoming a part of a gym and all of that is very different than when I started going in 2005, when we didn't even have like, we barely had a like an internet cafe that we could send emails from, right? So like now with like Google Translate and TikTok advice and stuff, like people are able to get to Thailand and do it a lot easier. So when I went in 2005, I was dropped off by a bunch of people that, did not speak English. And then I had to find my way back to the gym at 6 in the morning, getting chased by dogs. And, it was just, it was me in a room full of Thai boys that didn't speak English. And we're just like, who is this girl? Like, why is she even here?
Canadian
But
girl that's
yeah.
here in Thailand. Yeah. So you are seeing and it makes sense that you're seeing it in fighting, because I'm also seeing it like basketball and soccer and like all these areas where women's sports seems to be growing. And there's a lot of fans who are coming out to see games and fights and all that kind of thing.
What's that rugby player, that American rugby player? And
Oh,
she's just like,
yes. She was like,
Iona Mayer or something like that.
yeah,
What's her name?
she had a
Yeah,
TikTok,
she's
I think, that was pretty brilliant.
like, she's like a girl crush. I'm like, why
Yeah.
are you so powerful and cool? And like, and I think that's, like when I see like little girls fighting on like a TikTok video or whatever, like these little badass like 6-year-old girls just like choking boys out, in MMA tournaments and whatnot. I'm just like, this is just the best thing for them. Like little girls growing up strong is just like such an empowering thing to see, and something that I just like love and would push forever. Like if I had a little girl, she would be in jujitsu so quick. Like that kind of strength and empowerment, that kind of, I think that's where you get a lot of your confidence from. Like walking down the street, and sometimes I'm like, I could beat that person up and I could beat that person up, So like it gives you like this non-fear of just walking around. And I think
Right.
there is so much fear in our society right now. I think like having that strength, knowing that you could lift yourself up over a wall if you needed to, like it's, like I think
Yeah.
there's just too much badness in the world right now to not be kind of protected in that way. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Which brings me back to edibles and beyond recovery. Are there any other benefits you believe edibles offer people who use them? And how do you usually educate your audience about them?
I think it's kind of, like the conversations that we're not allowed to have in Ontario for marketing purposes or whatever. I could have never said CBD will help you, or eat this and your body's going to feel better. But in Thailand, we can, and that's exciting. So, I think that, yeah, people just need to have the conversations about why they would want to medicate. And I think that's where it comes from. Like, are you medicating for pain? Are you medicating because you need to sleep? Are you medicating just to, ignore your husband for a few hours? Like, why are you here? And I think that's a really important place to start. Like I started medicating because I had severe body pain and didn't want to take pills, and I was having severe anxiety and didn't really know what to do with myself. So, I think everyone's question could be different or should be different. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it sounds like that just goes back to the intention of why you're consuming. So you can consume
exactly.
more mindfully. And that's not to
Yeah,
say that you can't still consume, large amounts if that's what you're into, but just doing it with a knowledge of why you're doing it. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think people talk about that enough, or they should be talking about it more, but that is important. Now, I am curious because you've mentioned you spent so much time in Thailand, which I think is wonderful, and you are so smart to get away from those shitty Canadian winters.
Wow.
A little envious over here. I mean, it's a beautiful day out today, but Canadian winters are notoriously shit. Uh,
Yeah.
what are some of the key differences you've observed in cannabis culture and consumption practices between Canada and Thailand?
Um, Canada, Thailand just kind of opened it up in a whole way that I'm not going to say is better or not, but they started right away with your consumption spaces. Like my chocolate bars are in Medman in Thailand, and like what a space! It, like number one looks like a Mac store. Number two had an incredible flower selection, edibles selection, incredibly educated staff. But when you walked in and you say bought a gram, they give you a rolling tray with a grinder with papers, and there are a bunch of different seating areas. There was a safe room that had video games and couches. You had two different patio rooms, and they wanted you to stay, but they were also serving alcohol. So like in the fridge was like beers and edibles and and drinks and whatnot. So it was like I don't, especially in such a tourist kind of place, I'm not sure if that's the safest thing, because you've got tourists who may or may not be comfortable with cannabis, who are now putting it with alcohol and then possibly getting on a scooter to get themselves back to their hotel, right? So it's, I really appreciate the openness of what I saw, it was anything from people on street corners with card tables and weed in glass jars. And I think that's like one of my favorite things from the legacy days in Ontario was the fact that you could go into a shop, you can see the flower, like I'm not going to buy I guess if I was buying online maybe, but like if I was going to buy a sweater, I'd like to see it. I'd like to touch it. I'd like to look at it, but not being able to see the cannabis, not being able to smell the cannabis, like my body tells me right away when I smell weed if I want it or not, like it's an absolute like yes or no for me. So, I love the Thailand places that allow for that. Now, there's some really great things going on. Like my friend Brian Lunt owns a place called the Beach Samoy, which is the first licensed cannabis hotel. And they are like super, super into wellness. And they have like a naturopathic doctor that will talk about what you want. They have a lot of really heavy CBD products in there. And you have the option of having my chocolate bar on your pillow at the hotel. And that was just like, oh, it's the best thing ever. But I think that's how it should be. And, there is that discussion of like, is this product suited for you? And how is it going to make you feel? And, so they are able to have, they're doing like breath and bud workshops where you can do breathing and it's, you can consume and they offer you whatever you want to, and I just, I think that's a really beautiful thing. And Ontario is kind of like lacking that, so it's, it's sad that we can't really talk about the benefits of what cannabis does for you in Ontario. And it just puts us in a weird kind of place of like, I don't know, you can still have alcohol advertisements, right? And you can see people drinking and smoking, whatever. So it's terrible that cannabis can't have the same affiliation, with.
Yeah, and also the fact that we're 6 years at this point into legalization, we still don't have any like consumption lounges, I think is kind of a missed opportunity, because I'm sure a lot of people who come to visit places like Toronto or any other big city in Canada would love to be able to come and sit down and just buy enough weed to roll a joint and enjoy it.
Right.
But that's still not a thing. I mean, they just legislated to be able to take the paper out of the windows or whatever so you could see into the store.
I'm like, that took us 6 years. I'm like, that's so sad. I'm like, so
Yeah.
you can bring your kid into the LCBO, buy as much booze as you could possibly ever put in a trolley that doesn't have a single warning label on it. Like, tell me how a bottle of 151 proof doesn't have a warning label on it. Like the level of sickness that I would get from drinking that, but then like a pre-roll has like, if you consume this, all bad things are going to happen. I'm like, I know, but don't worry about the vodka, or whatever. Right. So, but like I loved Thailand because like when I got to the Beach Samoy, the staff brought me a bong to my room. I'm just like, where am I right now? This is amazing, So, and I love that. Like any of the consumption spaces that you in, and you could either rent a bong, they would clean it, they bring it over. Like it's just, how was that not awesome? And it was awesome. And,
it almost sounds like it's a little more, even though legalization has been newer for them and it's gone through some fits and starts.
Yeah.
That they're more quickly normalizing it a little bit so that it's not like this back alley thing. You can go to a nice hotel and have them bring a bong to your room or
right.
CBD chocolates on your pillow. I mean, that sounds amazing.
Right. And like, how is that? I don't know. Like most people will go to Thailand and get absolutely like hammered drunk when they get there. And like, that seems to be way more dangerous than a bunch of people say sitting in their hotel room and maybe eating a 5 or 10 milligram chocolate. Right. So,
and yet if I was to go to a hotel in Toronto and ask for a bong, they would probably look at me like I had 3 heads.
Like you're not smoking on our property, you know, like,
yeah.
Let alone even getting a patio on your hotel room. Right. So, yeah.
Well, the last time I stayed at a hotel in Toronto was a while ago, but I did make sure to get a hotel that had a patio, a little
That's
balcony.
nice. Yeah, it has to be done.
All the way outside.
Has to be done.
Yeah. Now I've also learned that you're a hash maker. What brought you to hash in the first place?
Well, it was kind of crazy. That was because of my partner, Joe. My partner, Joe, has been a long time hash maker. And we got together like 3 or 4 years ago now. And he was just like such a breath of fresh air in my life. And he's always been pushing for brands. He helped a lot with the Hash Corporation in the beginning. He's designed a lot of products on the market. He helped bring Fritz's hash rosin edibles to legal market. He's designed a lot of the hash snake pre-rolls, say for Benny Blunto and whatnot. So when him and I got together, what I always say is that he put his hash in my chocolate, and we just kind of were inseparable ever since.
Right.
So me taking my chocolate bar from being a distillate and isolate based bar into a full spectrum hash edible was, I found life changing for me. I find that the buzz of hash is much more medicinal, as opposed to, yeah, I always kind of say that like a distillate buzz is much more of a punch in the face with THC, where a hash buzz is much more of like a gentle hug on the couch. And I think, you know, if you ever experienced hash when you were in high school or whatnot, you remember how kind of chill that was. And I think that's kind of how people want to feel off cannabis products. But we've kind of, we're just, you know, I think starting with distillate in the legal market was a real mistake for us. And I think that it is kind of slowly backtracking now, and people are kind of figuring out the benefits of how hash makes you actually feel. Now, Joe and I started making hash together, and he works as a quality, he does QA work for the cannabis industry. So he does a lot of regulatory work that way. So I took over the lab for us, and we were just making a lot of craft cannabis for friends of ours. And I like to mostly work with like fresh frozen material. And it's become a real learning curve for me. I was always in the kitchen and whatnot with my edibles making, but now I spend most of my day in the lab and producing bubble hash, and that's been really fun for me, and kind of cool, exciting work. So it's been really nice to take flower from people that I really trust, where the quality is beautiful, where they freeze it in the proper way for me, and then I can make it into anything. So it's nice to be able to have products at home that I can trust and consume and feel really good about. So.
And I think you are onto something, because I'm starting to see a little bit more of full spectrum products in the drinks and edibles space.
Yeah.
Sure, because I think, you know, the companies are starting to realize that distillate, like you said, it is like a punch in the face. It hurts for a bit and then it goes away. And then the full spectrum is very gentle and it lasts longer, and it's just an overall better experience. And
Absolutely.
I think people are now starting to get smart enough, like the consumers, that that's what they're going to gravitate. That's what I gravitate towards anyway. Like if I have a choice between distillate and a full spectrum, it's full spectrum 100%. And people are getting really creative with that in the market. So I'm really happy to hear that you've gotten into that. And I did
Yeah.
smoke a ton of bottle tokes in high school. So
I can't believe how I smoked hash in high school. I'm lucky to be alive, really. But, you know, yeah, the bottle toke days that's insane. But
yeah,
like on a cigarette and whatnot, I'm just like,
yes.
wow.
Oh, I
But
smoked then too. So
yeah,
just
me too. Me
part of
too.
it. Yeah. Um, and do you see, I guess the next question I was going to ask is if there's any common misconceptions about edibles and hash that you'd like to clarify to the listener?
Joe and I always have a kind of funny conversation about it, because like when you see any of the hash rosin online, I think people really kind of celebrate a whiter hash as being better. And I think that is really based in some racist bullshit. You know, I don't believe that a whiter hash is a better hash. I believe that a whiter hash could possibly be slightly cleaner, but you're also removing a lot of the plant material from it, and you're removing a lot of the kind of goodness from it. So I think the stereotype of white hash being a better hash is not necessarily the correct answer. I believe as much of the goodness you can leave in it, it makes it kind of more of a broad spectrum kind of energy. And I like that. I don't think you need to strip it down and strip it down and strip it down. But I do believe that people will kind of catch on a lot more to eating hash products, and definitely seeing the benefits of what's going on there.
Right. So you see
Yeah.
people eating it more even.
Well, I know I do, right? Like I think, you know, I think when you give somebody the difference of, say, if you take so Sheesh is making hash rosin gummies now, and I love him, and he's an incredible person in the legal market and very deserving of what he's doing. But I think if you take his gummies or one of the Fritz hash rosin gummies and compare it to just a distillate gummy, there is just such a massive difference. And people weren't educated on it in the beginning, but I think people are kind of seeing the light with it right now, and seeing the massive difference in quality and how it makes you feel. And I think strain specific even better. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we tried some products last night. I usually don't consume legal edibles very often, but there's a brand called Ollie out there, and they were doing some really cool things with other minor cannabinoids. You know, they were doing CBC, they're doing CBG, they were doing THCV, and all of that is very medicinal benefits. And so they're still putting in the 10 milligrams of THC, but putting in all of those other minor cannabinoids. Is just a whole other new step in showing people the benefits and actually how you can make it quite a bit stronger as opposed to just the 10 milligrams of THC.
Right. And I am seeing, I think, a lot more home edible makers incorporating concentrates into their edibles more for a few different reasons. One being that they can, if they know the potency of the plant material they're working with, they can use a lot less of that to like
Um,
infuse something, and then they can better predict the potency too, or calculate the potency.
Absolutely. Like if you buy a gram of bubble hash or you buy a gram of rosin off of the OCS website, it'll tell you exactly what the percentage is. You know, you're melting that down into, you're decarbing it, melting it down into a butter or an oil or something, and you can literally throw that into anything, and you're going to know approximately, you know, once you divvy out your portions, which one, you know, what each square is going for or whatever, if you're making brownies or cookies or whatever. It's an easy divide. But when you're just doing it from flour, especially if it's untested, especially if you don't know if you decarbed it for the right amount of time or butter lost or whatever, you're not sure. And like that's like the first bunch of edibles I made. You know, we were really guessing in the beginning, right? And then we figured it out, especially as we moved more to a distillate product and whatnot. But you know, I'm sure the first 3 or 4 batches were completely wrong. You know, they were probably 25 milligrams as opposed to 250 milligrams. I was just putting the zero or the decimal in the wrong place, right? But, you know, I think, you know, when we had spoken about recipes, it is easy to just make stuff at home now. And you can do it with a legal oil, or you could do it with like a gram of hash or whatever. Or you could even take any of the edibles that are on the market, say a chocolate, melt it down. You know, there's all sorts of really cool products that you can work with just to be able to medicate yourself at home. Yeah.
Yeah. The options are vast, and it's kind of an exciting time to be in this space, just because there are so many more options. Though I do know a
Yeah.
lot of growers that will forever use their own flour and aren't necessarily testing it, but you can sort of figure it out. But you're always kind of guessing a little bit at how strong
Absolutely.
flour is.
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
it'd be really, I think it'd be hard to do that in the legal market, especially because like every batch is going to be a little bit different too, right? So,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, that's really cool that you're into hash making, because it's something I want to try myself, but it's just
Yo, it's really hard, cold, wet, dirty work,
yeah,
and extremely heavy and hard on the back because I am literally lifting buckets filled with water.
right.
So I felt that, you know, my training as a Muay Thai fighter really kind of set me up for this. You know, I have funny back muscles now from lifting buckets as opposed to face punching, but it's you know, it's been a really cool experience, and there are so very few women that do it. You know, I know of maybe 5 in North America, 5 to 10 in North America. You know, there's Cherry Bell Blossom, and you know, I've got Caitlin out in Kelowna, and it's just, you know, there's very few of us. You know, Mila the Hashmaker, like super classic, amazing women like that. And I think that hash making has been a real bro world for a long time, and I feel a super deep connection to it. I'm like, this plant is female. Tell me we're not
Yes.
supposed to be
Fuck
doing this,
yes.
right? So you know, it's been very empowering. And anytime you want to come to the lab, you're more than welcome, and I super encourage it. You know, I can have you fill in bags or whatnot, but it's you know, it's cool. And I like being down there, and I can kind of live my life down there, and play my music and do all the things and smoke weed if I want to. And it's cool. So the next kind of journey for that is that I'm going to be hopefully setting up a hash lab in Thailand and working with some of the companies out there, which will be interesting. But I think my kind of opinion on hash making is that, especially like the Ontario market, again, ruining things, but, they tried to make it into like a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday sort of thing, where to me, hash making is very seasonal and weather dependent. And, like
Mhm.
in like Morocco or Afghanistan, they're not making hash full time. They were doing it when it was time to do it. And I think that's kind of an important thing that we need to think about. Like I will be shutting down for a little bit soon because, it's definitely the end of season and, we're not expecting more plant material until, September, October again. And it also is really hot and you have to have a very, very cold room to do it. You have to keep it at a certain temperature or else you're going to ruin it. So it's it's cool. Like I love it and it's super empowering, especially to make my own input for my friends, for myself, so it's
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's always nice to know where your final product is coming from. Like I do like to get flour from friends or things like that. And it's always nice to know because I know exactly how they grew it. I've seen their
Right.
setups, stuff like that. So
Right.
it is really nice to be able to have access to that. Now you just mentioned it briefly, but you said you're going to potentially set up a hash lab in Thailand, which brings me to my next question, which is if you have any new initiatives or projects with Blessed Edibles coming up. Sounds like that might be a big one.
That's gonna be a big one, and then we're working on a couple of new products for Thailand as well, just to kind of continue on with the Bless line. My products in Thailand are doing pretty well, so we'd like to probably launch a new chocolate bar with just some different input, and then kind of continue on with possibly like a pre-roll or something like that with different infusions. I I really believe in the company that is kind of backing me that's there right now. And we've got a good sales team, but I think my job is going to be really important for me to be out there and be on the floor as well. And so there are really great opportunities for me there. And it's just really nice to be part of a community that respects what I do as opposed to just try to take from what I do. And they
Mhm.
didn't just want the licensing requirements to my chocolate bar. They really wanted me to be a part of it, which is very unlike uh, the Ontario market. So
Yeah. And I love when you mentioned earlier, I should have mentioned something sooner, but like you said, it was the chocolate was being made on an organic cacao farm. And I'm like,
yeah,
I just love everything about that.
like, and that's it, so like my bar being made at Valens and it was made with love there and
Yeah.
whatnot, but like being able to teach these women how to make the chocolate bar and then being shipped like uninfused samples to try the quality of the cacao that they're using, I was just blown away. It was just so delicious. And so even without any of the cannabinoids in it, it was just a really exciting thing because they were just as excited about it,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and
That
I
kind of
feel good
excitement.
about.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that kind of excitement is infectious. I would
Right.
imagine. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
they were excited about it and they were really happy to work with me about it. And, teaching people in Thailand how to infuse chocolate bars over a Zoom call was a pretty cool experience too. Right. So it's, exchanging knowledge and exchanging passion for
Mhm.
stuff like that, and I think that gets really lost in the Ontario market just because people are like so profits over passion, and
Right.
it's really sad
Hyper
that
competitive as well. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Which, there's other ways of doing it as you're finding. So I love that. Now, just to be mindful of your time, just a couple more questions, but what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's new to edibles or maybe even hash and wanting to incorporate it into their wellness routine?
Um, I think it's really about again figuring out why you want to, what your intention is behind your consumption. I think that a great place to start if you're dealing with pain or anything like that is higher doses of CBD and kind of also just starting to take care of yourself too. Like I don't think that THC and CBD is the end all be all for wellness and recovery. I think you need to, start with the food that you're eating and the water that you're consuming and the social media that you're consuming, and um, really figuring those things out. Now, I'm not going to suggest that people who haven't smoked hash before just go to get a hash infused pre-roll and, give it a go. But, smaller amounts of it, or starting with, say, a gummy that had small amounts of hash in it, just to give yourself a bit of a taste of kind of what's going on is really important. And being in a safe place and environment while you consume is important. I'm not going to suggest that you eat a hash gummy and head to a Muay Thai class where you've never been before. I think that could be a little dangerous or fun. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I think that a safe place of consumption is always important, and consuming around people that are knowledgeable about the product as well. Now, I always try to leave my DMs open for anyone that has questions about those sort of things, because I think that sharing that information is, there's no point of gatekeeping that kind of info, right? So,
yeah, you want to make sure that people have the best experience they can possibly have, so they'll try it again, because cannabis
right.
is
wonderful
most of the time.
If you could go home and have a vodka soda and feel okay, right? But if you go home and drink a Mickey of vodka and whatever, you're probably not going to feel that great. I feel like there's medicinal benefits in everything. Like I'm not a pro alcohol person at all, but I think that, small amounts of things can be really good and beneficial. But I think like CBD with a magnesium float and, some meditation and, a healthy, good meal with all the right fats in it can really benefit as well. So,
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That's great advice. Now, final question. What would surprise people about you?
oh, that's a great question. Probably that I'm really super soft.
Okay.
I think I'm pretty soft kid, but things that surprise.
I mean, that's a great answer right there, because you said earlier that you're pretty tough, which I believe, but then you're suggesting you have this softer side that perhaps doesn't
I
get.
think all the toughest fighters are really soft humans, and I think that it's because we've had to train so hard and be so vicious and all of that. That I think having those kind of skills hopefully will make you a humbler human and maybe a little bit softer. And I think that's really important. You know, I haven't been training a whole lot because of financial stresses, and we moved to Hamilton and all of those things. So getting back into that is has been a bit of a hard chore, and I think that surprises people that I'm not training as much anymore. But I'm a little bit older, and I think me finding that softness to myself and not feeling it to be a necessity to go train twice a day has been really healthy for my cortisol levels. So even though I probably feel a little bit lazier than I used to, I think it's important for me to learn the slow as well. I think that's really
Right.
important for a lot of people. I think society has really pushed us to go as hard and fast and nonstop, and I'm so
Yes.
busy, and like, why are you so busy?
Right.
Like I don't think that go is not, like, it's not healthy. And that's how I pushed myself from 30 to 40, in the gym twice a day, plus baking cookies, plus delivering edibles, plus working at a salon. Like, I was just wound, right? My phone
Right.
going off all the time. Now my phone doesn't go off, so I'm just like, okay, we're going to go walk the dog. Okay, I'm going to be outside. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that hustle culture is pretty prevalent in North America for sure.
yeah.
And finding ways to slow down, I think is wise, because we all needed that a little bit. But
Yeah.
I just want
I
to say
think,
thank you so much. Oh, did you have one last thing to add?
well, I just wanted to say, I think the kind of cool thing for me is that I've just started teaching an all women's Muay Thai class at a place called Soy Dogs MMA, which is in Hamilton, and being able to program all women's class has been really beneficial to me, because the way that I was taught to go harder, go faster, do burpees, just grind, like being able to kind of program a class that has to do a lot with getting your heart rate up and then a lot of mobility. But then teaching women like how to fight has been super empowering. And I think that's really cool, so that I can bring back, I can still talk to them about like wellness and cannabis afterwards, after
Right.
class, but I've also started doing Thai massage. So being able to use like hash rosin creams on like doing infused Thai massages on people for recovery has been a really cool kind of next step in my wellness kind of chapters too. So
Right. That sounds amazing. Well, Angelina, thank you so much for being with me today and sharing your story with the listeners of Bite Me. And I wish you all the best in all your upcoming adventures.
thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.